ESPN's Field Yates joins us now. The Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And Field, of course, ESPN NFL Insider. I assume that you've been following the whole sales story. Maybe not as close as we were day to day here, but when you finally hear the news yesterday, like, whoa, this is happening. I'm sure you saw the Sportico tweet like everybody else. And then, of course, Schefter gets it confirmed for you guys at ESPN as well. What was your reaction to this level of finality?
Yeah, the best day in the tenure of Dan Snyder owning the Washington franchise was yesterday. It was the single best day. As a matter of fact, one of the very few good days during this tenure. And I've been thinking about it more and more because oftentimes when there's change at any kind of level, a coach who gets fired, a GM who gets let go, a quarterback who gets benched, like, you can find ways to reflect and look back on things with a bit of a positive light. And I was trying to think back, and what are the positives from this tenure, other than the fact that it is over? There has been a remarkable lack of success, and that obviously is not just limited to on the field. It's caused significant embarrassment. And we've probably talked about very few owners, maybe Jerry Jones, I guess, can't even think of anybody else besides Jerry Jones, but there have been very few NFL owners that we have talked about more over the past 2 decades than Dan Snyder, and it's been for all the wrong reasons. So it's not often that an ownership group has as much influence in terms of what the changes might look like for the franchise going forward, as is the case now for the Commanders going forward.
So for those that don't know, because obviously most people just know you from TV. You've been doing it for a decade at this point, but you spent time in the league. You were with the Patriots. You were with the Chiefs, two widely considered very well-run organizations. Especially when you were with the Patriots, was kind of the middle of that of the run with Brady and obviously Kraft and Belichick and the whole deal. What kind of impact can an owner make on a football operation, either positively or negatively? And what kind of impact do you think Snyder made on purely the football, nevertheless the other more serious and embarrassing things over his tenure?
The best functioning organizations are when the football people are able to do the football responsibilities, and the people that are responsible for things like business handle business responsibilities. The problem for the past 2 decades is that football people were having to answer for Dan Snyder's almost literally unbelievable behavior. And it's a distraction. And, I always tell people, I don't think the players, I don't think it necessarily hit them on a day-to-day basis. And it's not like Washington has been unable to sign free agents in general. Generally speaking, I think that the players in free agency choose the team that is offering the most money. But they've brought players in. They've had reputable members of the organization. There have been a lot of upstanding Commanders players over the past couple of decades, and certainly still are on the team right now. But I think that the football operation will feel such a weight off of its shoulders. It's constantly feeling like it has to answer for their own boss, the person who signs their check. And then I think on a more sort of hands-on level, the way that an ownership group can really influence and change a football product is that while there is a salary cap on how much you can spend on players, there's not on how much you can spend on resources. You can spend whatever you want on the coaching staff. You can spend as much as you want on an improved facility, whether it's the weight room or the practice fields or whatever it might be, the nutritionist. All those factors that can be limited by an owner can also be potentially heightened in a significant way by an ownership group that's willing to fork over a record sale price of $6.05 billion dollars to take over this Commanders franchise.
Field Yates, ESPN, with us. I have said over the last, 24 to 28 hours, however long this has been, that while the stadium is the sexier project in terms of what has to be done next by the new owner, presumably Josh Harris, that the practice facility is actually the more important thing because it's day-to-day. Michael Phillips from the Richmond Times-Dispatch made a really good point in terms of the chronology earlier, that because they might want the practice facility at the stadium site, they probably have to figure out the stadium situation first. That's just logistics. But in terms of importance, how would you describe the how left behind a team is? I'll phrase it that way. If they are not up to par on a weight room facility, on meeting room, capabilities, on all of the things that so many of these teams have in their more modern facilities that have been built and become kind of commonplace around the league.
It's
in the league.
Listen, you can win without that stuff. The Bengals don't even have an indoor facility, and they are currently they are either that's been a recent development for them. Like, they have to walk across the street to get to their practice fields. Like, they have been miles behind the rest of the league for a long time, and obviously they've been one of the best teams in the NFL over the past 2 seasons. Great players are going to win you football games, but I think where it matters is that when you are a player on a team and you're pondering your future with that team, you don't want to stick here because this organization is serious about winning. And if I have the opportunity to go elsewhere and make comparable, if not more money, then maybe I will go somewhere else because this place isn't serious about winning. But I think that you have the opportunity to show that you're serious about it. And, you know, I know that people sometimes have a lack of empathy for professional athletes because in the cases of many, they're making millions of dollars to play this sport, but they also have to go through the season. And if you're going through what is a 6 or 7 month march and it's just miserable to show up to work every day, it's going to have, you know, maybe a small effect on how you perform on the field come Sunday. So I would say, though, that more than like just the practice facility or the field, the stadium, like, the respectability is going to matter a whole lot more. And I use the Bengals as a good example because for, I don't know how long, you and I are a similar age range, Craig, and think about how long we knew the Bengals as the laughing stock of the NFL. It doesn't feel that way anymore, right? They feel like one of the organizations where players would want to go play. And one of the organizations that if you had to make a short list of the teams most likely to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, they would be on it. The Commanders can change some of that because they can win. I just feel like having an ownership group that's not Dan Snyder helps get us closer to that point, even before they play the game on the field.
No doubt. And if they can draft whoever their equivalent of Joe Burrow or acquire somehow someone like Joe Burrow, you know, that tends to help too. As you said, like the great players can override it, but you'd rather rely on solid infrastructure to then support those players, et cetera, et cetera. Again, Field Yates is our guest from ESPN. The other big thing, Field, that I'm so happy that you're on today to talk about that I'm super interested in is I don't know if to call it an analytics revolution is too strong, but the insertion of analytics into how people think about football. And not only like folks like yourself or Mina or whoever on television, Bill Barnwell writing about it, but folks inside the league, because Josh Harris in Philadelphia with the 76ers obviously has employed Sam Hinkie, employed Daryl Morey, people that are on the cutting edge of how basketball is thought about and how to build a team. So I would imagine as he gets in here in Washington, he's going to think the same. What can you tell us generally about how analytics has started to inform team building and the way teams play and how that could change, the direction of this franchise if there's a bigger investment in that area?
Yeah, the most important thing I can always remind people about analytics is just because a team employs analytics, it does not mean that it is run by analytics. It means that it's a part of the equation, right? It is about influencing decisions. And in the same way that film study or any number of things can influence a decision that involves a player being signed or cuts or a play design or decision making within the course of a game. That's where analytics matters. And I actually think Ron made reference to the numbers last year when he was talking about the decision to acquire Carson Wentz. And I think one of the first things he said, I think it was something to the effect of like, we saw the analytics on Carson and obviously we studied the game film as well. But I think it helps make for a more fundamentally sound decision-making process across the board. I think it's healthy to have a room full of people who are not simply going to say yes to whoever is in charge, but rather are going to bring fresh and different perspectives and have a much more comprehensive approach to every decision that you wind up making.
Yeah. The Carson thing was so funny with the analytics because it was just so bad. And it's like,
what were the analytics?
Right.
Yeah.
And it goes to show too. I mean, this was the case for a long time in the NBA, which is a more data heavy sport for a lot of reasons, where it was like, yeah, everyone's got the data. Some of them are actually good at looking at it and some of them are not. And I think that's the separator too. And I do wonder if Harris can find some of the smarter people who know what to do with the data and employs them in the same way that he has in Philadelphia.
that'll be an interesting decision-making process that he has on his hands. But you're right. I mean, I think that just expanding your resources in general is a good approach because there is so much more available than we thought there was for so long when decision-making relied upon much more traditional measures.
No doubt. A couple more minutes here with Field Yates of ESPN NFL Insider. You can watch him regularly on NFL Live. He's got the Fantasy Focus podcast. He's got a lot of stuff. Basically, if you want to hear Field Yates football insight, you can do that. And luckily, he's given it to us here on the radio. Perhaps the biggest, most immediate decision that Rivera has to make is Chase Young, the fifth-year option coming. There's a lot of people that think that, he just kind of wanted to wait out the ownership situation because Snyder and Young's family are close and all of that stuff. And he kind of didn't want, I'll borrow the phrase that Michael used earlier, the blood on Snyder's hands. Knowing that, Montez Sweat also is due a contract soon, that they just signed Deron Payne, how would you be approaching the fifth-year option for Chase Young and the decision the Commanders have to make?
Yeah, Craig, I'm not going to sidestep the question. I am simply going to offer this. When Ron Rivera mentioned that it's about the knee, then that suggests to me there's a lot going on there for a knee injury that, of course, limited Chase to 3 games last season. Missed the first 14 of the year before playing the final 3 of the season. If that thing is something that still is an issue for him going forward, then that's a decision that no matter what you think of him as a player, if you don't know the total scope of what he is dealing with medically, it's impossible for us to think that this is a layup decision one way or the other. Based off of ability and the pass rush position, whether you want to call it a defensive end, outside linebacker, edge, however you want to categorize it, it's an easy yes. But because that fifth-year option is now fully guaranteed, which was implemented recently, it's not I'm sure you recall, this is not like the RG3 situation where you pick up the fifth-year option and then in the 4th year of his contract, it's a non-guaranteed deal. He becomes the scout team safety and then just watches practice from the sideline for the rest of the season. So I don't think we're in that territory. I think that the fact that Ron has highlighted just how important the medical side of it suggests to me that knee injury was certainly more complex than maybe some people just would assume, given how many athletes are coming back from torn ACLs with basically no long-term impact. So I don't want to cop out, but I don't know exactly what's going on there with the knee, which makes me wonder this makes me think, I should say, that Ron was not giving us lip service. It's legitimately a decision they are pondering and will continue to ponder once they have Chase back in the building for some of these off-season workouts.
Yeah, they have a couple of workouts they can do before that May 2nd deadline. Great insight, as always, from our guy, Field Yates, ESPN NFL Insider. Anything coming up this weekend or next week that you want to highlight that you guys are doing leading up to the draft and everything?
Yeah, all kinds of draft shows. So lots of SportsCenter specials that'll be on each night and then also available on ESPN Plus for those who like to watch things on demand. I'm telling you, if you're looking for a crash course to the NFL draft, head over to ESPN Plus. You get all kinds of Kuiper and McShay content.
Oh, I mean, that's what we live for this time of year, so that's good stuff.
It's the best.
Field Yates, everybody. Field, thank you.
Thank you.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.